Welcome to Study Faith with AI, where we use the power of AI to help you explore the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I'm Meg Jensen,
And I'm Paul Carter.
and we're Google AIs. Whether you're a lifelong member or just starting to learn about the church, we're here to dive deep into its history, beliefs, and culture.
So if you're ready to learn, you're in the right place.
That's right.
Let's get started. All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into some really fascinating territory.
Oh, yeah.
The Book of Mormon witnesses.
Okay.
But we're not talking about your typical 3 and 8 witnesses.
Right.
You want to uncover those hidden witnesses.
Oh.
The whispers and the claims surrounding those who may have encountered the gold plates.
I like it.
Yeah. So think of it like an archaeological dig.
Okay.
We're going to be sifting through layers of history to unearth these lesser-known accounts.
So it's kind of like detective work, too.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
We're examining fragments of stories,
Right.
piecing together a puzzle that really challenges those common assumptions about the Book of Mormon's origins.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we have quite a mix of sources.
Oh, yeah.
We've got historical accounts, scholarly analysis from people like Dan Vogel,
Mm-hmm.
and even some skeptical viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission,
Yes.
if we choose to accept it, is to present you with a clear picture of what these additional witness accounts reveal.
And explore the implications, of course.
Of course.
If these accounts are credible,
Right.
they add another layer of complexity to the already intricate story of the Book of Mormon.
Definitely. So first up, let's talk about Emma Smith,
Okay.
Joseph Smith's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she's not listed as an official witness.
Right.
But
Yeah.
several accounts suggest that she interacted with those plates quite a bit.
That's right. We have descriptions of her moving the plates, feeling their weight,
Wow.
even hearing those metallic pages rustle as she shifted them.
Oh, that's interesting.
This raises immediate questions about their physicality. Were they a tangible object that existed in the real world or something more ethereal?
Okay, so we've got Emma
Yeah.
handling these plates,
Mm-hmm.
experiencing their weight and sound.
Yeah.
It definitely paints a picture of something solid,
Mm.
something real.
Yeah.
But wait, doesn't Dan Vogel suggest that the plates might have been made of tin?
He does.
How does that fit in?
Well, Vogel's tin plate theory is a fascinating one. He argues that tin was a very readily available material in Joseph Smith's time
Interesting.
and could explain many of the plate's alleged properties.
Let's break that down.
Okay.
I remember reading about William Smith,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph's brother,
Yeah.
claiming the plates weighed between 40 and 60 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And Martin Harris, one of the 3 witnesses, described them as roughly 6 inches wide, 8 inches long, and 6 inches thick.
Those details are crucial.
Yeah.
A solid block of iron with those dimensions
Right.
would be far heavier.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But if we consider the plates as individual sheets bound together,
Okay.
the weight becomes much more plausible,
Makes sense.
particularly if they were made of a lighter material like tin.
So tin plates could potentially align with the physical descriptions.
It could.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
David Whitmer, one of the 3 witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
described an encounter that sounds straight out of a mystery novel.
Right.
He talked about seeing a man carrying a knapsack who simply vanished into thin air.
This is the infamous man on the road encounter.
Yes.
Whitmer claimed this man walked alongside their wagon,
Wow.
refused a ride,
Really?
and then disappeared without a trace.
Oh, my goodness.
Later, Joseph Smith allegedly told him that that man was Moroni, the angel who delivered the plates, and that he was carrying the plates themselves.
Hold on. If this angelic being had the plates, wouldn't that mean that Joseph didn't have them at that time?
Right.
It doesn't add up.
It certainly creates a perplexing inconsistency in the timeline.
Right.
Was this a genuine supernatural event?
Right.
A case of mistaken identity?
Yeah.
Or perhaps a story embellished over time to bolster the claims of the plate's existence?
That really makes you wonder.
It does. We're left with more questions than answers.
Okay, so we have Emma interacting with the plates,
Mm-hmm.
a mysterious disappearing man, and
Right.
the possibility of tin plates.
Yeah.
Before we get too lost in the weeds here,
Okay.
let's take a step back and consider the historical context,
Right.
belief in magic seer stones.
Sure.
And the supernatural was pretty common back in the 19th century, right?
This is very common.
Could that have influenced what these witnesses thought they saw?
Absolutely. We can't separate these accounts from their historical context.
Right.
It's crucial to consider the possibility that suggestion group dynamics or even outright deception might have played a role.
It makes me think of those religious revivals
Uh-huh.
where people would fall into trances or
Yeah.
claim to see visions.
Yes.
Could something similar have been happening with these additional witnesses?
It's a compelling parallel.
Yeah,
We have to consider the possibility that some of these individuals might have been highly suggestible,
right.
especially given their pre-existing belief in the supernatural.
Right.
Their experiences might have been shaped by their expectations
Uh-huh.
and the powerful influence of Joseph Smith's narrative.
So we're already seeing a complex picture emerge.
Yes.
A blend of physical descriptions, supernatural encounters,
Mhm.
and the potential for psychological and social influences.
Ab-
It feels like we're piecing together a puzzle where the pieces don't quite fit neatly.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? We have
Yeah.
to examine each piece of the puzzle carefully,
Right.
considering all the angles
Yeah.
and potential explanations.
Absolutely.
You know, as we delve deeper into these accounts,
Okay.
it's striking how many of these additional witnesses came from the Whitmer family.
Right. It's almost like they were the first family
Yeah.
of Book of Mormon witnesses.
The first family of Book of Mormon witnesses. I like that.
We've got David Mary and even Jacob Whitmer,
Yeah.
who claimed to have both seen and lifted the plates.
Jacob's account is particularly intriguing because he was one of the 8 witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
the group who claimed to have physically handled the plates.
Right.
What's interesting is that he specifically states he was chosen as a witness because he had already seen them previously with his brother David.
So his earlier experience, which wasn't part of the official witness accounts, may have influenced his selection as one of the 8. It's almost like a prerequisite for
Right.
believing.
It raises the question of whether the other 7 witnesses
Right.
might have also had prior experiences that predisposed them to believe.
Oh, that's a good point.
Experiences that perhaps made them more likely to accept what they saw or thought they saw
Right.
when Joseph Smith presented them with the plates.
That makes you wonder about the power of suggestion.
It does.
If you're already expecting to see something extraordinary,
Uh-huh.
you might be more inclined to interpret any ambiguous experience as confirmation of your beliefs.
Precisely, the psychological phenomenon of priming is well documented.
Okay.
Our prior experiences and expectations can significantly influence how we perceive and interpret new information.
I see.
And when you factor in the close-knit nature of the Whitmer family,
Right.
the potential for shared beliefs and reinforcement within that social group
Yeah.
becomes quite significant.
Okay, so we've got this cluster of Whitmer family witnesses,
Yes?
and then we have some other intriguing figures who pop up. One that stands out is John Gilbert, a typesetter, who worked on the first edition of the Book of Mormon.
John Gilbert's account offers a glimpse into the behind-the-scenes process of the Book of Mormon's creation.
Oh, interesting.
He claimed to have seen the plates,
Okay.
but his description is a bit different from others.
All right, how so?
He stated they were covered with a cloth,
Mm.
and he was only allowed to lift them slightly.
So he didn't actually see the plates themselves, just felt their weight through a cloth.
That's right.
That's a far cry from the angelic visitations
Yes.
and open-air viewings.
It is indeed, and it lends some support to Vogel's theory
Okay.
that the plates might have been a cleverly constructed prop.
A prop.
A prop that could be felt but not scrutinized.
It starts to sound a bit like a magic trick,
It does.
creating an illusion of something extraordinary while carefully controlling what people are allowed to see.
The parallels to stagecraft are definitely there.
Yeah.
If we consider this from Joseph Smith's perspective, he needed to create a tangible object that could convince people, but he also needed to maintain control of the narrative
Okay.
and prevent anyone from examining the plates too closely.
It's a delicate balancing act,
It is.
convincing people without letting them get too close to the truth, so to speak.
Right.
But wouldn't someone have noticed if the plates were fake?
Well,
Wouldn't it have been easier to expose a fabrication?
that's where the social and historical context is crucial.
Okay.
We have to remember the intense religious fervor of the time,
Mm-hmm.
the widespread belief in magic and the supernatural in that environment.
Right.
Questioning a prophet, especially one who claimed divine authority,
Uh-huh.
was incredibly risky.
So fear and faith might have kept people silent even if they had doubts?
Absolutely. Plus, there's the powerful influence of group dynamics.
Right.
When you're surrounded by people who believe,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes much harder to question those beliefs,
Yeah.
even when presented with conflicting evidence.
Okay, so we have John Gilbert and his limited viewing of the plates.
Yes.
Are there any other accounts that suggest a similar level of controlled access?
There's an intriguing story from Catherine Smith,
Okay.
Joseph Smith's sister-in-law,
Right.
according to her.
Huh?
She stumbled upon the plates one day while cleaning.
Right. She just found them lying around.
She did?
Weren't they supposed to be carefully guarded by an angel?
You would think so.
That doesn't sound very secure for a sacred text.
No, it doesn't. That's what makes her story so interesting.
Okay.
She describes finding the plates wrapped in a linen cloth, hidden under a bed.
What?
And like some of the other witnesses,
Yeah.
she commented on their weight, saying they were surprisingly heavy.
So we have another account focusing on the plate's physicality.
Yes.
Their tangibility.
Mm-hmm.
But Catherine Smith was deeply embedded within the Smith family circle,
Right.
which makes her a potentially biased witness.
It's true that we have to consider the source. Those closest to Joseph Smith might have been more inclined to believe his claims,
Right.
regardless of the evidence.
Yeah.
However, their close proximity also suggests that they might have been privy to information or experiences that outsiders were not.
It's the age-old dilemma of insider versus outsider perspectives.
Right.
We have to weigh the potential for bias
Mm-hmm.
against the possibility that these individuals had access to a different side of the story.
Exactly.
And in Catherine Smith's case, there's another interesting detail.
Okay.
She claimed that after finding the plates, she told her husband Hiram,
Mm-hmm.
who then rebuked Joseph
Yeah.
for being careless with such a sacred object.
Can you imagine?
Imagine that a family argument over misplaced divine relics.
Family drama.
It adds a touch of humor to the narrative, doesn't it?
It does.
It's a reminder that even within this story of divine revelation, there were moments of everyday life,
Right.
family dynamics,
Yeah.
and perhaps even a bit of sibling rivalry.
Absolutely.
Are there any other accounts that provide these glimpses into the more human side of the story?
Let me think.
These less than extraordinary encounters with the plates.
There's a brief mention of a woman named Sally Parker,
Okay.
an early convert to the church, in a letter. She claimed to have lifted the plates and turned the leaves enough to satisfy her curiosity.
It seems she approached the plates with a more practical,
Yeah.
perhaps even skeptical mindset.
It's refreshing to hear an account
Yeah.
that isn't framed in terms of religious awe and wonder.
Right.
It reminds us that not everyone who encountered the plates was swept up in the fervor of the movement.
Exactly. And it reinforces the idea
Yes.
that we're dealing with a complex tapestry of human experiences
Yeah.
and interpretations.
It is a complex tapestry, but unfortunately,
Yeah.
we don't have many details about Sally Parker's encounter.
Oh, really?
It's just a fleeting glimpse
Okay, fair.
into a potentially fascinating perspective.
It feels like we're piecing together a puzzle with some missing pieces. We have these fragments of stories,
Right.
these tantalizing hints that there might be more to the story than we've been told.
That's the nature of historical research, isn't it?
It is.
We often have to work with incomplete information,
Yeah.
relying on fragments and interpretations
Right.
to construct a coherent narrative.
But even with those gaps, we're starting to see more nuance, more human pictures.
Yeah.
We've got family dynamics, conflicting accounts,
Yeah.
and a range of experiences from the visionary to the mundane.
And that's what makes this exploration so valuable.
I agree.
We're moving beyond the simplistic, often idealized narratives
Right?
and uncovering a story that is far more complex and intriguing
Yes.
than we might have imagined.
Okay, so we've examined accounts from Emma Smith,
Mm-hmm.
the Whitmer family,
Huh.
John Gilbert,
Yeah.
Catherine Smith,
Right.
and Sally Parker.
Okay.
What about those claims that the plates were incredibly heavy? If they were made of tin, wouldn't they have been relatively light?
That's a great question. It's true that tin is a lighter metal,
Right.
but we have to consider a few factors.
Okay.
First, the accounts of the plate's weight
Mm-hmm.
vary considerably.
Right?
Some describe them as surprisingly heavy,
Okay.
while others don't mention weight at all.
So we have inconsistencies right from the start.
We do?
Could these inconsistencies be explained by the way the plates were handled or perceived?
Certainly imagine lifting a stack of bound tin sheets.
Okay.
The weight might feel significant.
Yeah.
Especially if you're expecting something heavy.
Right.
Plus, the psychological impact of believing you're holding a sacred object
Right.
could influence your perception of its weight.
It's like the placebo effect.
Yeah,
Our beliefs can have a real impact on our physical experiences.
they can.
But what about the inscription on the plates?
Okay.
How would that have been achieved if they were made of tin?
That's where things get really interesting. tin is a relatively soft metal, making it susceptible to damage.
Right.
If the plates were indeed made of tin,
Yeah.
the inscription process would have required a delicate touch
Okay.
and specialized tools.
So it wouldn't have been a simple matter of scratching a few words onto a tin sheet.
No, not at all.
It would require a certain level of craftsmanship
Yes.
and expertise.
And that raises the question of whether Joseph Smith possessed the skills and resources to create such intricate engravings on a relatively fragile material.
This takes us back to that idea of Joseph Smith as a potential master of deception.
It does.
If he did fabricate the plates, he would need considerable ingenuity and skill to pull it off.
Absolutely. And that's a possibility we can't discount.
Right.
But it's also important to acknowledge that we don't have definitive proof that the plates were fake.
Right.
We're dealing with a historical mystery.
We are.
And there's always room for uncertainty and alternative interpretation.
We're essentially detectives. Sifting through the evidence and trying to make sense of it all.
Trying to piece it all together.
But before we jump to any conclusions, let's hear what other witness accounts have to offer.
All right.
There are still more stories to uncover, more pieces to add to this intricate puzzle.
More pieces of the puzzle. We've encountered a fascinating cast of characters in this deep dive into the hidden witnesses of the Book of Mormon.
Oh, yeah, we have.
From family members to curious neighbors and even a skeptical typesetter.
Yeah.
It seems everyone had an opinion on those plates.
Right.
But after examining these accounts, where do we land?
Yeah.
Were the plates a tangible object, an elaborate hoax, or something in between?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
So let's recap what we've learned.
Okay.
We have accounts describing the plates as heavy, making metallic sounds, and even feeling like they had pages. These details certainly create the impression of a physical object.
They do.
And we can't forget Emma Smith's experience moving and hearing those pages rustle.
Right.
It all points to something tangible, something real.
Yeah.
But then we have those conflicting accounts like John Gilbert's, where the plates were always covered, the viewing was restricted.
Right.
This is where Vogel's tin plate theory comes back into play.
Vogel's theory is certainly compelling.
Okay.
It offers a plausible explanation for how Joseph Smith might have created a convincing prop using readily available materials.
Okay, so if he did fabricate the plates, wouldn't someone have exposed him?
Well,
It seems like a risky move, especially given the scrutiny he was already facing.
that's where the social and historical context becomes crucial.
Okay.
We have to remember the religious fervor of the time, the widespread belief in magic and the supernatural.
Right.
In that environment, challenging a prophet claiming divine authority would have been incredibly risky.
Yeah. People might have been hesitant to speak out, even if they had doubts.
Absolutely. Fear and faith can be powerful motivators.
Right.
And then there's the influence of group dynamics. Yeah.
When you're surrounded by believers, it becomes much harder to question the prevailing narrative.
It's like that saying about the emperor's new clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody wants to be the one who points out that the emperor is naked.
Exactly.
Everyone's afraid to be the lone dissenter.
Right, and when you add in Joseph Smith's charisma, his ability to persuade and inspire,
Right.
it becomes easier to understand how he might have maintained control of the narrative.
Okay, so we have these witness accounts that both support and contradict the idea of real physical plates.
Yes.
We have compelling arguments on both sides.
We do.
Does the lack of definitive proof automatically invalidate the claims? Or could there be something more at play here than simple fact and fiction?
That's a question worth pondering.
It is.
We've explored the historical context, the physical descriptions, and the human element.
Right.
But perhaps there's a realm of experience that transcends those categories.
Okay.
A realm of belief and faith that defies easy categorization. It's like that saying, I'm a scientist, but I'm also a human being. We can't always explain everything through logic and reason.
No, we can't.
Sometimes we have to acknowledge the mystery, the unknown.
Precisely. And that's where this deep dive ultimately leads us to the edge of understanding.
Okay.
It's a place where we confront our own beliefs and assumptions.
So for our listener who's been on this journey with us, what's the takeaway?
Yeah.
What do we want them to walk away with after exploring these hidden witnesses and the possibility of tin plates?
I think the most important message is that history is rarely black and white.
Okay.
It's a complex tapestry woven from countless threads, beliefs, motivations, interpretations.
Okay.
And sometimes the most intriguing stories are found not in the grand narratives,
Okay.
but in the whispers and shadows,
Uh-huh.
the voices that have been overlooked or forgotten.
It's a reminder to always dig deeper,
Yes.
to question the accepted truths, and to be open to the possibility that there's more to the story than meets the eye.
And perhaps in that space of uncertainty,
Yeah.
that willingness to embrace the mystery,
Mm.
we find something far more valuable than simple answers.
What's that?
We find a deeper understanding of ourselves, our history, and the enduring power of belief.
This deep dive has come to an end,
It has.
but your journey of discovery is just beginning. What other questions does this raise for you?
Yeah.
What will you uncover as you continue exploring this fascinating and complex chapter of history?
If you find value in this exploration, please like, share, follow, and consider becoming a subscriber. Your contributions help keep these conversations going and allows us to maintain the highest quality production. You can find all the details at studyfaithwithai.com. Thank you for being part of this journey.